Easier.
Well, I put it on the cloud. Do you think this is too much Christmas?
I don't think there's ever too much Christmas. Um, but please don't take that as a challenge and prove me wrong.
I would be the one to accept that challenge and overwhelm you.
You you definitely would. Oh my God. Now I know why you were doing the banjo in the song. You've got saloon doors behind you.
Yeah. Yeah, when I
Right
was
before
singing
this
that.
call, Will was butchering a song that he didn't even know who did it. It's Keen's Everybody's Changing.
Just
And I was like, you're
randomly in my head after years of not hearing it.
there was a weird banjo solo happening after. I was like, that is not it. That is just terrible.
Well, how would you articulate the guitar solo?
I don't know, but it's like a nice instrumental.
It is.
Like
And
do
it
do 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 do
I
do
think where
do.
we
I don't
get
know.
hung up is in my head it sounds nice, but I'm sure whatever I'm projecting externally does not sound nice.
You feel like you're singing some aria from the opera, and instead
Yeah.
it's some. Oh my God, I saw a video. This is great. So speaking of that, um, I had someone send me a video 2 days ago, an old friend who's in Boston now. Like that's how we communicate now is basically like videos.
Boston.
Boston.
Yeah, say it
And
correctly.
she sent me a video of like this whole family of Latinos from like they were all adults, but it was like, I think kids, parents, and even the grandmother was in there. There's probably 9 of them. And they're singing like one of the most famous arias is the Queen of the Night from the most people don't even know what it's from. I happen to perform in it, so I know what it is. It's the Magic
Oh.
Flute. And it's the oh, that one, that one. So they're all trying to sing it. The and half of them come out and it sounds like they're croaking like it's just so bad. And they're all trying not to laugh. And like that's the funniest part to me is like watching all of them try not to laugh as they go person by person, and each one is projectibly worse. Anyway, that's what made me think of it. But yeah, you did slightly butcher their song. I'm sure they'll forgive you. Um, but your background's way nicer than mine, and that's why I wanted to have it in our virtual office because Zoom is boring and doesn't give me any nice backgrounds, and you've got, you know, Santa's workshop going on behind you.
Yeah, I love our virtual office, but it's just not a good space for recording, I guess. Too much going on, as you would describe it.
There's a lot going on. It's great for a meeting,
But
maybe not for
yeah,
visual.
it's a good place to work internally. That
Yeah.
is for sure.
Is that our little plug for Cosmos? Sponsored by Cosmos, our
Yeah.
virtual office. Except we have no sponsors because we're 3 days into podcasting. Speaking of which, we're probably supposed to start with what do people start with? They start with
Well, you
what the
have,
hell this is called.
so the way that this works is you have a surprise question for me
Yes,
to catch me off guard
we do.
and
And
get
then we
my
argue
input.
about it. But
So,
aren't we supposed to say the name of what who we are, what we're doing? Alex and Will, Will and Alex. Didn't you always want us to be like have a show?
yep,
The Will
Will
and
and
Alex
Alex in
show.
the evening.
Exactly. You can make up some, little ditty for that and sing it for everyone. Um, yeah, and this is what HR and other tomfoolery is what we're going with right now.
Lots of tomfoolery.
Um, Lots of tomfoolery, starting with the surprise question.
Tom, is it Tom or Tom?
Tom,
Tomfoolery. Okay.
yeah, tomfoolery. I know sometimes I have really interesting words that just come out. Just seem like it fit. Yeah, so my question, I had an interesting conversation today. My question to catch you off guard tonight that we get to argue about is Do you feel that, I don't know if it's like this younger generation of service providers or the market has just shifted in general because we've had this age of like YouTubers and like people that create short bits of content that are supposed to help, help you improve or learn something. That now service providers are all trying to make a quick buck, but they're taking the actual service out of customer service. Like they're just creating this lengthy blueprint that they're selling you, and you do literally all the work.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you told me that we were going to do this together, and I'm not bringing this up just because of us and our situation. Like this was shared with me from somebody else, and they were like, I didn't buy it because when I got the contract, it was like, oh, so basically I'm doing all the work and I'm paying you to show me how to do it, but really I could go to YouTube and find the content on how to do this, and it would probably take me a little more time, but ultimately you're not really saving me any time because I have to do all of it myself and learn how to do it.
Yeah. So now
And
I know what you're
it's
talking
unfortunate.
about. At first I
Awesome.
didn't know what you were talking about, but yeah, now I know what you're talking about. And I think and I love to complain about this type of thing. So
Yay.
this is a great topic because unfortunately what's happened is, and I think what you're leading to with the younger generations and the YouTubers and things is that people get into businesses for the sole purpose of making money, which
Right.
that is a perspective, right? And arguably, like people could argue that perspective of the value of that, right? Like a business's only, its only existence is to make money, right? In order for it to be in business. But there's a difference between a business making money because it's providing a value versus like a business solely functioning just to make money. And I think that that's what we're seeing a lot now
Yeah.
with businesses is like they're functioning solely to make money instead of like taking something that you're passionate about or that you're good with and you want to share it with the world or share it with like as many people as you can, and then be compensated for it. Like that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. It seems like people do it backwards where they're thinking of like where can I make the money and then like reversing it from there rather than like following things that they're really good at and then engineering how to make the most money from what they're good at, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Or maybe it starts as one. And what I was thinking of, like, as people try to scale their business, because maybe they start out wanting to, help people and make money from it. Everyone, of course, wants to make money from what they do. But, when you get to the point of like, how do I scale this, especially for a service-based business like ours, right? For a service-based business like ours, it's hard to scale it because we're very hands-on with our clients, which involves a lot of time. And something that's scalable needs to be like less time, more efficient for the money, right? And what I've seen is that these service-based companies are trying to scale in a way that's like almost removes the entire service element. It's just like, let me capitalize on what I've learned and what I know by putting together this huge program for you where I just write everything down or record a bunch of videos and write some SOPs and outlines and like give you all this content for you to train yourself on how to do it. And it's like, it's not wrong. I mean, it works for some people in theory, but I think I learned this lesson pretty early on when I created that career program because we have like a 40-page booklet, right? It's like all these exercises and people go through it. One builds on the next, builds on the next, builds on the next. And it feels very self explanatory, right? These are just exercises and it's not different modes of content. So it shouldn't be overwhelming. It's not like I have to learn a new web platform and some of this is written, some of it's a video, and some of it's a article I have to read. And no, it's like, it's all in the workbook page by page, but people still really struggled with it. We would give it to them and they would, we didn't even charge them much for it because we were trying to see if they would pay for it to begin with. We were piloting it. And people like it flopped. They just couldn't, they didn't have the time or the mental energy or the know-how or the focus to go through all of that by themselves. It was just overwhelming. So they just didn't do it, and they didn't do it successfully, or they had questions that were left unanswered and then they got frustrated and they stopped. So what I learned was like, you really can't remove the human element of that process, right? You can't have a couple group coaching calls and think everything's going to be fixed. Like, people really need someone to guide them through it, I think, more often than not. And so I started doing more of a blend of like, okay, we're going to meet, we're going to go over these next couple exercises and how to do them. You're going to take a stab at it on your own. And then we're going to meet again and we're going to review what you did. And we're going to answer the questions. We're going to get you through the hiccups, right? And then we're going to go to the next round. We're going to keep doing that. So it's almost like I was an accountability partner, and also a guide, but we weren't spending every call doing every exercise together, right? Like, they were still having to do some work on their own. And that seemed to
Yep.
work really well and provide a lot of value for a lot of people. So that was a really long response, but I'm wondering, like, how do you scale a service-based business without losing the service element?
Yep. Yep. And that's something that, because I was thinking when you first started with this topic, I was thinking about what we've tried to do with our business, right? Is trying to make it more efficient with still knowing that you have to have people, you know,
Right.
um, as that like relationship manager and the one-on-one service, because things get lost, if you don't. I was just thinking about this with my home improvements because I've been doing a lot of home improvements, right? And people that have done it before and know what to do, they'll tell you like, oh, just watch YouTube, like you'll learn a lot on YouTube, which is
Yeah.
totally true, right? That's totally true, but I think it's easier for them to say because they at least have like a background and understanding of what's going on. Whereas like someone who has no understanding whatsoever watches a YouTube video and they get a few things from it, but they don't gather all of the nuances for what to be looking out for, as they're going through it themselves, because they just don't know what to, don't know what to expect and don't have that experience behind it. And so it's the same thing in our business, if people that don't know anything about recruiting or HR, or maybe they know a little bit, but it's not their full-time job. They're not immersed in it every single day for their entire career. There's so many nuances that you have to have someone helping you, and you have to have it be customized for your business. So,
Right.
yeah, something that I've seen is a lot of people will promise like all these automated, candidate sourcing tools. And, when it comes down to it, like you can have tools that make things more efficient in terms of like process and organization. But when it comes down to it, like the bottom line, like you'll never be able to automate sourcing. I just don't
Right.
believe it. Because to find those passive candidates, like the reason why they're passive is they're not responding to automated things.
Right.
So,
Right. They're not
so
actively looking, so you're not going
yeah,
to get them with some canned.
yeah. Just me as a recruiter, like all my best placements. I mean, I've made a lot of placements um, through whatever, an automated process, you could say. But the best placements I've ever made have been those like organic nurtured relationships where like I've connected with someone over time, I've gotten to know them, and then when a client has a role, I think of that person like a CRM or an Excel spreadsheet
Yeah.
or something doesn't remind me of this person. Like I think of them on my own, having gotten to know them and make that match. And those have
Right.
always been like the best placements where like both sides are so happy because whatever the client's looking for is something niche and like a unique skill set that, some CRM is not going to be able to grasp fully, like all the soft skills that
Right.
that person had, where I was able to grasp it over time with, getting to know them.
And I've probably had 50 people referred to me over the last 7 or 8 years just from people that experienced going through a recruitment process with me, and we built a relationship, and they were like, oh, she takes care of people, she treats me like a real human, and it stood out. And so when they find someone that needs help, they send them my way. And even though like there's really nothing I can do with them, because I don't do active, we don't do active placements like that. It's not like we're turning and burning a lot of roles. It's just not our framework. I always try to help them. Um, and if I was a recruiter, it just shows the benefit of, if I was a recruiter like that, like a standard headhunter, like it shows the benefit of um, those relationships. And what I was gonna say, back to your previous comment about, YouTube videos, this person actually shared that with me. They were like, uh, they're in real estate, and they said, if you need something, just call me. If you have a question about anything, call me. And the person had a question about how something would function. And they went to YouTube and they couldn't find anything. And he's like, oh, because it's not actually this, it's that. Right. And that made me realize like there's a level, like automation works for people that have a level of expertise in something. Like it makes your job so much faster in automating the things that you no longer have to think about. It just takes time. You know how to do it, and it's just time. Right. But like I have to know what comes next. I have to know how to prompt, even ChatGPT, right? Like I have to know how to prompt it. And I need to know what framework to give it to churn out really good content. And that comes from the knowledge and expertise I've cultivated over time. Right. And to know its quality when it comes out, or to refine it. Clients have to know what questions to ask. And many times that's where we become the most beneficial, because they'll come to us with like, hey, what they think they need. Like, hey, we need a handbook redone. It's like, cool, we can do that. But then we dive into it and it's like, well, you're missing all these policies, right? You haven't touched that policy in ages. Is this even relevant to your company anymore? No. Okay. Well, we have this policy, but we're constantly have to making these exceptions. Okay, well, then that policy is not working for you anymore. Like we need to adapt it to where your business is now. And then all these strategic conversations follow, right? And now it becomes like a strategy of so much more than a handbook, because the handbook itself is not actually serving you. So now we need to talk policy and strategy and culture and what you're trying to create and what your workforce looks like. So what makes sense for them. Um, and all of that takes the knowledge of someone that has a level of expertise in their field, and would not happen if someone goes and tries to churn out a handbook on a website, right? Like, yeah, you might get a cookie cutter handbook and maybe it is compliant, quote unquote compliant, but it's probably not really serving you. And your handbook is meant to be your first line of defense in a lot of things, and also set the tone for your organization so that you can be consistent in your actions and behaviors. And when you can't be consistent with your handbook is when you're opening yourself up to liability. So if those
Yep.
policies aren't serving you, you're not going to be consistent, and now you're liable all over again.
That's a really good way to put it. Is it might be compliant, but it's not serving you. Yeah. Because we've seen that a lot. Yeah, we've seen a lot where people have compliant handbooks, but it doesn't match or align with how their business operates. Um,
Right.
which then, like you said, kind of leaves them open. But
Yeah, because the whole thing, line of defense is like you have to be able to prove that you are consistently handling something a certain way. Right. And if there's all kinds of variations, because it's like, well, the policy doesn't really work. Well, now you've got a problem.
yeah,
You're not technically compliant anymore.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, but so I want to address like your original question was how do you grow and scale in a business where like the service is so important? And I think that there's a few different answers. I would start with, so from a recruiting perspective, people have like a successful business that is operating is always going to have recruiting needs. Like you're always going to have people that are moving up and assuming new responsibility and want different challenges and
mhm.
want to move out of the role that they're in, but then you have to backfill. You're going to have people that, are moving on with their career And like when people move on with their career, like you want to be happy for them. You don't want to be focused on like being upset that now you have a headache of recruiting someone to fill that spot, right? So I think in order to scale, like you have to have a like a well-oiled recruiting machine to be able to get people in. And like a piece of that is I think a lot of people that have a problem getting good candidates in would say that they're not getting quality applicants, you're not getting qualified applicants. And so I
Mm,
think a way to open up the recruiting pool is if you have like a strong and stellar training and onboarding program in place to where you can fill in the gaps of people who, align in a lot of ways, but might not be fully qualified from a technical standpoint. And so if you build and strengthen like your training programs, it makes it a lot easier to ramp people up a lot quicker, right? And so like you're always going to have recruiting needs. So you have to have that machine in place, but then you also have to have a training machine that, understands that the market's changed, right? And so there's a ton of people who have strong work ethics that are in the marketplace wanting to work, but might not be directly qualified, for your role, but could certainly do the job if they were given the right resources. So having like a strong process in place for giving them those resources and having it be predictable and continual and really set in place. I think that that's
yeah.
like a strong way to help automate a lot of your business while keeping people at the front line for for that service piece. Because it could be anything, right? You might be hiring offshore people. And if you're hiring offshore people, like you really have to have a stellar training program in place.
Well, you know how I feel about training and onboarding. It's like
Yeah.
very overlooked.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a huge area of opportunity. I mean, so many
huge.
like as a recruiter, so many companies spend crazy amounts of money to get a,
People in
a
the
you know a
door.
perfectly qualified candidate in, right? So
Hmm.
when in what happens is like it usually takes a long time, right? Because they're like, okay, if I'm going to spend 20,000 or 30,000 or 40,000 or 50,000 on a recruiting placement fee for one person, like they have to be absolutely perfect,
Yeah.
right? And so it could take like 3 or 4 months to fill that role. So in that time period,
Sometimes more.
yeah, you have an empty role, and then by the time the role's filled, now you've spent, $40,000, and where you could have taken that money to have like a stellar training program in place and filled the role in 2 weeks with someone who might not have had, all the experience that they needed to have, but has, a lot of other transferable experiences and work ethic and cultural alignment, and then train them up over
Yeah.
the next 2 months. And now you've got somebody in the seat that's operating and doing well, 2 months, 3 months sooner, and half the cost, or the cost is used to be repeatable, right? Like a recruiting placement fee is for a person. It's not even
Right.
for a role. It's not even for a role in your business. If you think of your business as an entity, that money isn't even going to the entity. It's going to a dynamic
Person.
person who changes their mind and has emotions, right? So
Right.
they want to move up or they leave the company. In my experience as a recruiter, no matter how long someone stays, it's always too short, right?
Yeah.
I had someone call me up. They the candidate left like after like 14 months or something, and they wanted a refund.
Oh
And
no.
I've had, I've had people that have stayed 4 or 5 years, and like, the client was understanding, but they were still like, that was a lot of money, And so it's
Oh
like
no.
no matter how long, like no matter how long someone stays, like it's a ton of money, right?
It's
Because it
wild.
didn't
Yeah.
solve you spent all that money and it didn't solve the role. So
Right.
um
Right. Well, I mean, that's why we built our function to build out like the infrastructure and solve the like the long-term
mhm,
problem, not the person.
right.
But what I was going to say to that is like the other piece people don't think about is the ramp up period, right? So you spend like 4, 5, sometimes 6 months, especially on a role that you're paying that high amount to. Like you sometimes will spend 6 months recruiting for that role. And then the person takes, and on average, 9 months to a year to fully ramp up. And like you said, we also know statistically that it's more about uh, attitude fit and culture fit, like in personality, than it is experience or
Yep.
skills. Right? It's more about their aptitude than their actual experience. And so, you could spend that money creating a repeatable process that ramps people up a lot faster, and you hire faster. And yeah, you've solved your issue.
Right.
That's that big picture thinking. Not everybody quite grasps.
Mm-hmm.
We chase, the problem in the moment with how we know how to do it. We don't always like to deviate from
Yep.
what we know.
So the other answer that I have about making things more efficient while still maintaining people at your front line is, and I've been saving this because I love talking about it. I like to save the best for last. And so when you first, it was the first thing I thought of when you brought up this topic, and I love when you surprise me with things. I love talking about Southwest, and I just got
I
done.
love Southwest. I freaking
Yeah,
love them so much.
I
Yeah.
just got done traveling for Thanksgiving, and I was just telling you earlier today that I had like a not so great experience. I was flying a different airline. I was flying United, and to me, like all the airlines are the same, right? Like mistakes happen, things are challenging, you're traveling, it's stressful, you're out of control. Like, you know what I mean? Like to me, they're all the same, right? But what makes Southwest different is that when there is a problem, they solve it immediately.
Yeah.
They solve it immediately for you without you having to do anything. And the reason why that is because every single person is a decision maker.
Right.
Every single person. So, I got into
They're
a heated
empowered.
argument with a gate agent who I was validated by the flight attendant that that gate agent was the rude one. It was not me. I was validated by their coworker that that gate agent did not treat me correctly. And so I got into a heated argument with them because I kept repeating to them, I said, I know you can solve my problem. I know you can solve my problem. And they kept saying, no, I can't. Like it's out of my hands, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is that someone else created a problem, right? And so now I'm to the next step with another person, a gate agent at this stage. And now the gate agent is trying to push me on to the
Someone
next
else.
person, right? And I'm like, the whole reason why I'm here is because the person before you made a mistake. And now we can stop it right now with you. But you're trying to send me on to the next person. And like, well, that's how things work. I'm not the manager. I can't help and blah, and it's like, but I know you
Yikes.
can. I
Yeah.
know if you take the time, you can help me. And they didn't. And so that was in our heated argument, that was my closing statement was I was like, stuff like this never happens at Southwest because everyone is a decision maker at Southwest. Everyone at
You said
Southwest.
that to them?
Yeah, that's exactly.
That's fantastic.
So I don't want to go
We
through the
need to
whole
call
story.
Southwest and get some free flights
Yeah.
over here. We're gonna also sponsored by Southwest.
I don't want to go through the whole story, but I had to pay a fee, which now so that's the whole thing is like now I'm spending my time on the phone and in emails getting the fee refunded and resolved, right?
Right.
And I shouldn't have to do that. The I
We
this should have been solved to begin with. So anyways, when I paid the fee, I used my Southwest card. And I
Yeah.
told her, I said, I'm using my Southwest card, and this stuff never happens at Southwest because every person's a decision maker there. So, in your own business, if you have a service business, you have to make every person a decision maker, but you can't just say, like, oh, everybody owns their own role and everyone can, service their clients as they see fit and make their own decisions. You have to
No.
give them a clear blueprint of what they're allowed to do and why and when so that they don't even have to think about it, right? It's just muscle memory. When things come up, they know how to solve the problem and they know that it has to be them, right? There has to be some kind of cultural statement that says something like the buck stops here, like
Yeah.
whatever phrase you want to use, but you have to have a clear blueprint to give them so
Well,
that they
that's
don't have to call the next person.
right. That is defining and operationalizing culture, right? Which
Yeah.
is where we find people to the level of detail you need to, and the level of repetition and the integration and the habit building that people just don't do. Um, And yeah, no, I won't go down a separate rabbit hole because I think that's a good place to wrap it. But you know, one of the things that we do as a service-based business is we always put two people on a client so that they can build a relationship. And they know that they own that client and they know that they have our backing to do whatever they can to solve that client's problem and make that client happy and feel like they were given value, right? Versus just collecting
Mm-hmm.
an invoice. And we always say that, right? Like we're not here to collect invoice, we're here to provide value and make an impact. To the point that some of our consultants get frustrated when they can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when they have clients that just aren't responding to them or doing anything they're supposed to do, and they're like, I can't work with these people. Like I can't do anything for them, like I can't help them. And
Yep.
to me, like that's a good problem to have because it's someone that genuinely cares about what is our culture, which is making an impact and providing value.
Right.
So
Yep. We talk about it at home all the time with the kids,
yeah.
It's like, oh, I spent 10 minutes on cleaning the bathroom. Well, but it's not clean. It doesn't
Oh
matter.
yeah.
Doesn't matter how much time you spent on it or that you went through all the motions. Like you missed whatever, all these steps. And
I
so, yeah, you have to put it in. It's not about the time or it's not about the effort. It's about the value and the end result.
yes. My 7-year already knows. He repeats it back to me. I always say if you're going to do a job, you need to do it right. And so I'll say if you're going to do a job, he's like, I know, I need to do it right. And I will call him back. And I always say, like, my level of stubbornness is going to serve me in parenthood. And it does. Because
Yeah.
I will call my child back. I did it yesterday. I was nursing the baby on their bed, making them clean their room. And I probably called my son back from downstairs 7 times for like a little piece of something that he left behind. I was like, I told you to pick that up. Like, you
Mhm.
still have a piece there. Like, finish it. Do not go back downstairs in front of the TV until it's done properly. Like, that level of detail, like painstaking detail, but that makes a difference. It makes a difference in how, when he gets older, he's going to do a job. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what speaking of like the time invested in it, that's what I always try to get them to understand is like if you have to do it, like you might as well be the best. Like if you have to go to school every day, like you're at school every day from 8:30 to 3:30, like no matter what. If you
yeah,
show up and you slack off and you don't pay attention, like you're still there from 8:30 to 3, like you don't get to not be there. So if
right,
you're gonna be there, like you might as well learn as much as you can and get the most out of it and make as many friends as you can and help as many people as you can and every single day because otherwise like it was just a complete waste. Like you
right.
had to get up and get dressed and sit in class and do all those things and what was the point of doing all that if you weren't the best at it?
I love that. That's a cool approach. I hadn't thought of it that way,
Well, they
but it's
haven't cracked
true.
it yet. I
Yeah,
thought it was an awesome idea. I thought it was a great story to preach, but they haven't quite
I
figured it
haven't
out.
quite grasped it yet. We
Yeah.
go the efficiency route because my oldest is always about like, he's severe ADHD. So for him, it's about like getting through what he doesn't want to do to get to what he does want to do. So it's always like, hey, is it faster to do it right the first time or to be called up 7 different times? You could
Yeah.
have been done with this 20 minutes ago. It's like finally starting to click for him. He's like, oh, yeah. So
Yep. And the
anyway,
way to make it
well,
faster is to give them some great training, give them some great elbow to elbow time,
yeah,
have
we do it
them.
together.
Yep. Yep. So it's the same with growing your service-based business. Boom.
Exactly.
Wrapped it.
We do it
Wrapped it
together.
perfectly.
Wrapped it with a bow, just
Yep.
like your
It all
presents and
came in
all
a
your
circle.
Christmas. I just want to point out that Christmas threw up all over your background and it's only December 2nd and I'm not the least bit surprised.
Yep. This has been up for a while. It's
I
always
know.
tough though when Thanksgiving is late You know, because sometimes Thanksgiving is like could be like the 23rd or 24th. It's always really
Yeah,
tough when it's like the 28th. I feel like you miss out on so much of the Christmas season. So when that
so
happens,
much,
I can
like 4 days.
get things going a lot sooner. Yeah.
You crack me up. I love it. Well, going to be enjoying, you know, our next couple weeks gearing up for the Christmas season together because this season I get to celebrate it.
Woohoo.
And um, more on that next week. Um, drag it on today. But
Yep.
yeah,
We'll start
I
there.
I will start there.
We'll start there next week with our partners and their difficulties.
Little did you know this is going to turn into a partnership and marriage podcast. Just kidding. I love it. All right. Well, y'all, like anyone's listening live, it's bedtime for us. I'm going to bed. You going to bed?
Yep. Signing off.
Signing off. Bye.
Bye.